Hey everybody, welcome to a new year, 2026. I cannot believe 2026. That means I'm older. I'm old. Yeah, 60 years old. Still doing this stuff. This video will again focus on the new Canon R6 Mark III, but it's going to be a video about video. Shooting video on this camera. I've got my R1 and my R5 Mark II up here as well. This isn't really going to be a comparison, strict comparison between the capabilities of this camera and these two, but there's some things to kind of know about there. Mainly, I want to talk about the two things that I care about most with video. Now remember, I'm shooting bird. Hey, I'm Ron Bielefeld, by the way, and this is Whistling Wings Photography, if you didn't know that. So anyway, the two main things that I really care about with video: quality, of course, and autofocus. How does the autofocus perform? Autofocus with video is obviously different, how it behaves and what it can do, than when you're shooting stills. And that's been something that's, progressed, I think. The capabilities, the performance of that as we get into these newer cameras. So we'll talk about those two things, basically. Image quality and autofocus performance on the R6 Mark III, a little bit of comparison with these two cameras. So if you're interested, stay tuned. Okay, here we are, the R6 Mark III, shooting video. This camera has some capabilities in it that these don't. And let's talk about the first one right away, because I'm going to get it off the table. This is about birds and birds in flight. Some pretty fast action on one end, and more normal, slower action, perch things on the other. But this camera has open gate internal RAW shooting. You can capture raw video open gate. That means it's using the entire sensor. And a full frame sensor, the dimensions of that, if you want, how many of you post videos to Instagram and Facebook? I mean, it's vertical. Personally, I just don't think video is supposed to be vertical. But that's the way these systems work. So it's always been kind of a bummer when you're shooting in 16:9 aspect ratio and now you gotta make it vertical, and it's cropping in and get zoom in and fit in the frame or not fit in the frame and having black bars on top and all that. We don't have to worry about that with open gate because of the dimensions of the full sensor. So you can go vertical without all that, without all those issues, if you want to call them issues. And they are a pain to deal with. So that's neat. But here's the it seems like still today we can't have something without kind of having some sort of drawback to it. You give and you take, right? This camera can only do 30 frames per second in open gate RAW. Well, 30 frames per second is okay. And hey, the image quality's really good. I can show you some examples. And 30 frames is fine when you're doing perched stuff, not a lot of action or even slower action. It'll look nice, it looks okay, but 30 frames per second really is a drawback when you're trying to capture fast action like birds in flight. It's tough to make it look smooth. 60 frames per second or even 120 frames per second, much better option. And then of course, if you shoot 30 frames per second open gate, you can't slow it down. Again, for me, my birds and birds in flight, I like to have the option of slowing my footage down because a lot of these birds when they're flying are pretty fast, and the drama and dynamics can really be brought out, and the action of the birds and what they're actually doing, slow motion grabbing a fish out of midair and stuff like that. It looks really cool when you slow it down, and in full speed it's like what just happened. So open gate is nice It's going to be great for a lot of people, but be aware, there's limitations, 30 frames per second. Now, and I'm gonna really concentrate on you can shoot internal RAW. I shoot the RAW lite, Canon RAW lite. I love shooting RAW. The image quality in RAW, in light RAW, or RAW lite, is just amazing. It's like shooting raw stills in a way. You have to do some post-processing with this, right? You have to do some grading, use LUTs, whatever process you want to do to bring everything out of that raw footage. But boy, you want to talk about, you can take a look at some footage from this camera, of course, and you can do it in these two cameras as well, the R1 and the R5 Mark II, but we're talking about the R6 III for the most part. It's stellar. It really is good. And I have no qualms about it. And if you get out of the open gate, you can shoot 60 frames per second. You can shoot 60 frames, and that's pretty nice. It works out well. Of course, you have the options. If you want to get into 4K, then you've got 120 frames per second. So, got some options there. One of the other things that's different about this camera, the R6 Mark III, than these two, beyond open gate shooting, is it has a setting on the dial here, right, the mode dial, that says S&F, and that stands for slow and fast. These two cameras don't have that. What that allows you to do is it allows you to not only set your frames per second video capture rate, but it allows you to say, hey, I'm going to be playing this back on a, for example, 30 frames per second timeline. You can see what that looks like in the menu of the camera. And so then when you bring that footage in to post-process it on, I use DaVinci Resolve, and you put it on a 30 frame per second timeline, it already plays in slow motion. That's nice. Of course, there's other things about that, but I'm not going to go into everything about the slow and fast and all the aspects of this. Just more what I've been using up to this point. It's kind of nice. It kind of removes a step. But for me, there's one big drawback again from being in S&F. And that's when you're shooting stills and video, going back and forth, which these hybrid cameras, that's what's great about them. One of the great things about them, in my mind, is that you can be shooting stills 1 second, some action starts happening that you think is much better captured in video, and you just flip that switch over here, and now you're in video. Well, yeah, that works, switching back and forth. But I shoot manual exposure for stills, and I shoot manual exposure for my video. And if I'm in the S&F mode, I just can't go switching back to shooting stills from video mode, because my mode on the top dial here is not on M anymore. It's not in manual mode. So there's a problem there. So I keep my dial on the top here set to M, manual exposure, and I set my video settings in the menu, and we can go over those. See my menu setup for open gate, for 4K, for RAW, for, all these different settings. But by keeping this on M and doing the video setup in the menu system, I can just switch back and forth with this switch right here. Stills and video, no problem. And of course, it remembers your settings, from your still settings to your video settings, so you can just switch back and forth and shoot both. These cameras don't have S and F modes, so it's all just manual and doing basically the way I do it here. But let's talk about autofocus. All of these cameras now are pretty good in autofocus with video. And you have a lot of the same stuff going on in there. You can set it to animals and eye detection and all that stuff. The problem I always had with video autofocus is, first of all, the transit, when it's out of focus and it finds a subject and goes into focus, that used to be really, that transition is really slow. And of course, you can control how fast that transition is, that focus transition. But I want it to be fast, because a lot of times I'm doing fast action stuff and I want it to get on a new subject and I want it to go there. I don't want it to fade in. And I mean, that's great for cinematic stuff. I'm just trying to capture small clips, short clips of action for the most part, and I want it to be faster. This camera, if you look at the menus in here, it's got more more graduations of focusing speed, retention, locked on. Is it responsive? Is it locked on as far as tracking a subject, staying on a subject? And so this camera has finer gradations when it comes to choosing those speeds and responsiveness to subjects and things like that. And does that mean it's got more capability? You know what? I think to me it almost seems like the autofocus in this camera, the R6 Mark III, when it comes to especially staying on a subject, whether you want it to be locked on and not go to a new subject if it comes into the frame real quickly, stick with your original subject, or you want it to be very responsive. It seems to me that you have more control over that in the R6 Mark III than you have in these two cameras. It's close, but to me it seems like it's a little better. And overall, the autofocus system in this camera is supposed to basically be the same. The same autofocus system is in the R5 Mark II, but whether it's the 32, the different sensor, in here, or I don't know, but it just seems like it does a better job finding and staying on a subject than the R5 Mark II does. The R1 is right up there, I would say, with the R6 Mark III. It's all very close, but to me, I like the way the R6 Mark III autofocus works and performs for video. It's kind of like this camera, then this camera, then this camera. But they're all really close. But I do like the R6 Mark III in that respect. And, for slower action and stuff like that, I have the responsiveness of the autofocus to subjects, to tracking, to locking on the subject, kind of in the middle, and it seems to work really well. For really fast action, like diving kingfishers, flying down, up, flying around really fast, you've got to have responsiveness all the way up. You want it to acquire that new subject quickly, and I want the autofocus speed to be all the way up. It's the only way I've found that these systems, including the R6 Mark III, will keep up, and even then, it's difficult for them to keep up. I'm shooting the 200 to 800 a lot for my video, but I'm also shooting a 600 f4. These 600 f4 especially should be really fast. Capabilities with the motors should be able to keep up. Sometimes yes, sometimes they're on the edge, it seems to me, keeping up with fast subjects moving toward or away from you quickly. But the R6 Mark III is right up there. Okay, so overall, so far for video, the R6 Mark III is very, very capable, and it is capable. It's right up there with these other two cameras. I think surpassing the R5 Mark II many ways, I guess, at least some ways. The R1 is pretty good now, but here's a potential problem for some of you, and it's reared its head a little bit with me being here in Florida. It's winter now, so we have cooler temperatures, but it still gets up there. temperature, shooting raw, shooting 4K, 120 frames per second, whatever. This camera gets hot. This camera gets hot. The R1, bigger body and everything, manages heat really well. So Canon knew that the R5 Mark II got hot. Shooting video, we'll talk about stills here because we're talking about video. So they built in a cooling vent system in the camera, and they built a cooling grip for the camera. Guess what? It works, and it works really, really well. The R6 Mark III. Body size is pretty much the same as the R5 Mark II. So guess what? It gets hot. And it gets hot quick, depending on your settings, depending on the ambient temperature and conditions around you. But they didn't build in the venting system in this camera. So it gets really hot. And I've had it shut down. And that's a big, I have a hard time understanding. This, I've got the grip, the vertical grip on my R6 Mark III that also fits on the R5 Mark II. So why did they not build in the venting system in the R6 Mark III so that you could also use the cooling grip they already make on this camera, just like you can use the vertical grip that was basically made for this camera, the R5 Mark II? I don't know. And I'm shooting short clips, okay? I'm a minute for the most part at most, but a lot of them. And I'm shooting stills in between, and it gets hot. So just be aware. That is a limitation that I have found for my shooting. Maybe it'll be a problem for yours. I don't know. But I'm out there shooting. This one gets hot, so then I got to switch cameras because this one's cool to keep shooting my video. Till this one cools down. That's not a great option to have to do. So that is the biggest limitation I found with the R6 Mark III. Is that it doesn't have the cooling. Now, I'll tell you that what Canon has done is they've made it so that the heat comes to the outside of the camera, I think, a lot more efficiently. So it doesn't heat up quite as fast as like the R5 did way back when and stuff like that. I always use that way back when. Wasn't that long ago, but long ago when it comes to the life of these camera systems. And so, I mean, you feel it, and it's like up here by the shutter button and on the grip. This is where they're moving the heat to the exterior of the camera, and you can feel that. So when it's cold outside, it's great. You got a built-in hand warmer for your right hand if you're doing a lot of video or, looking through the viewfinder a lot for stills and the camera's warming up. That's great for that, but boy, it's not so great when it's hot outside and it's overheating. So overall, I want to say this. Canon has a heck of a lineup of cameras out right now. And I have 3 of them here, obviously, and they're all amazing cameras. You can't go wrong really with any of them. 24 megapixels, right? 45 megapixels, 32 megapixels. This camera, the R6 Mark III, is an unbelievably well-rounded camera. The 32 megapixels is kind of another sweet spot in there with the 45, but I'll tell you, noise control on video with this shooting up to ISO over 25,000, you can still use the video footage. You can still use the stills that you take at high ISO. It's really a great high ISO camera, low light camera. And that's the great thing about video, as you know. We're shooting shutter speeds that are so much slower. You can capture action in almost pitch dark. Almost. It's like dark out there. And I'm capturing video that's usable. And that's the beauty of these hybrid systems. The R6 Mark III. I love the camera. I love it for the price point. It's got great image quality. It's got great speed all the way around. And I don't care if you're talking about stills or video. So I would not hesitate to get this camera, just realizing the limitations, in this case with video. Mainly the limitations are, you know, heat. Limitations when it comes to stills is if you're going to shoot electronic shutter and you want to take advantage of the full, you know, speed of this camera and stuff like that, you've got rolling shutter at times, you know, with fast moving items or parts of birds or golf clubs or baseballs or whatever coming through the frame. But to be honest, in my first video, I thought it was a real bummer that, you know, the read speeds off of this sensor weren't that great, weren't that fast. But, you know, it's still there, and it's a limitation. But it's not as bad as it could be for what I do. So, there you have it. Comparing it to these two cameras, they're all great. It's a great video camera. It does things and has capabilities that these don't. And if you're looking for a great hybrid camera that's, I think, reasonably priced for sure, the R6 Mark III, you won't be disappointed. If you want more resolution for stills and things. Okay, so one last thing. I'm really falling in love with shooting internal RAW footage. So much latitude and ease of working with it in post-processing for color grading and all that, the sharpness, the detail. So what do you have? You have a 24 megapixel sensor, a 45 megapixel sensor, and a 32 megapixel sensor. So what does that give you if you're going to shoot RAW, right? 6K RAW, 7K RAW, 8K RAW. I mean, 7K RAW here is it's good resolution. You can zoom in. 8K RAW even better, but a little bit less performance on the side of, you know, low light and more noise a little bit in your video. This is great in low light video, but only 6K RAW given the sensor resolution here. So anyway, have at it. Pick your poison. The lowest price, of course, is right here, and more than capable for, boy, if this is the only camera I had, I could do what I do. So, there we go. Hey, until next time, I hope you have great light. I hope you're getting great video. Be safe. I'll see you soon. Okay, a quick run through of the menu settings for setting up for video. Here we have, I'm set for RAW, but OpenGate is off. Let's talk about OpenGate first. So if we go down to the and turn it on, you can see what happened there. The RAW is now OpenGate right there, and we only have 29 or 30 frames per second available to us, or 24. So there's not a whole lot of options there. It's also set to RAW Lite. If we turn OpenGate off, you can see that it's changed now to 60 frames per second RAW Lite. And if we go down to 29 or 30 frames per second actually, then we have the ability to shoot RAW rather than RAW Lite. But I shoot RAW Lite, so I can set it to 60 frames per second. Movie cropping is disabled. And if we move on down, sound recording is on. You can see the sound format there. And we can quick run through the rest of these menus. There's nothing really magic going on in here. Everything is set pretty much default. I am shooting a Kelvin value. Preset pre-recording is off. Tally lamp is off. I don't want that thing blinking when I'm out in the field. And other than that, that's the setup that I use. Okay, so if you set your mode dial to S&F, this is what you see. Shooting mode is now S&F M in this case. And now you see space for not only your frames per second, but also your playback timeline speed, in this case 29.97p or 30 frames per second. Shooting intra-frame, go through all this. You can see all the different options in here when you work in S&F. Like I said in the video, the main thing that you get from this is you get the ability to shoot in like 120 frames per second, but play it back already in slow motion on a timeline that's say 29, 30, or 60 frames per second. So here you can see the autofocus settings. I have servo enabled. Autofocus area I use is mostly full frame, subject to detect animals, eye detection off, switching track subjects. For slower things, maybe down in the middle. For really fast things, diving kingfishers, set all the way up to high at 5. Servo speed, again, you can turn it down if you're shooting slower things, I find. But if you're doing really fast stuff and you want it to keep up, you put it on 10 at fast. Okay, a quick look at my custom buttons set up for video. And I use my autofocus on button to stop and start my video recording. And I use the asterisk button to bump autofocus, get it to autofocus when I want. And I set up my autofocus point button, the far right button, to pause servo autofocus. And this is the way I've been shooting for a long time now. And it works really well for me. I have muscle memory for these buttons. And so there it is.